I'm going to give you all the goods to craft the ultimate muscle building intermittent fasting plan. You're going to want to go and fetch a notebook and a pen because we're going to go through a lot of detail. I'm going to give you everything that you need to craft your own plan. This isn't a meal plan. I'm not going to give you specifically what to eat because there's just too much variety and too many likes and dislikes between different people. But if you have the ability to craft your own, then you're in tremendous shape, all right? So we're going to talk about all kinds of things, ranging from the timing of your meals, timing of your workout, timing of supplementation, what kinds of things you should break your fast with, how you should orient your workout. There's going to be a lot of details, so stick with me through the entirety of this thing. Okay, one thing that we don't have to do in this video is talk about the justification of intermittent fasting and building muscle. I will go right on record and say right now, you absolutely, positively can build muscle with intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting is not about caloric restriction. It is about allocating eating windows to specific times. It's about manipulating and outsmarting food timing, period, okay? So with that being said, let me ask you one thing. Please do hit that red subscribe button and then please hit the little funky looking bell icon and select that all notifications tab. That allows you to see whenever I post new videos, which is every single day these days. And I don't want you to miss a beat. We've got all kinds of cool educational content like this. All right, so let's go ahead and let's dive in. The first thing we need to talk about and get out in the open is insulin. Insulin is going to be a recurring theme in this video. You're going to hear me talk about it a lot, okay? Because insulin is everything when it comes down to manipulating how we build muscle at specific times. If you go back to old bodybuilding culture, bodybuilding magazines and muscle building magazines, what's the one thing that they do always say? They always say at the end of your workout, you should be consuming lots of protein and lots of carbohydrates. Well, the reason they say that is to spike your insulin levels. At the end of a workout, you're insulin sensitive. What that means is that at the end of a workout, your body will soak up the protein. It'll soak up the carbohydrates in a better form. It won't go to fat, it'll go to muscle building. Well, guess what? That same philosophy applies with fasting, because fasting increases your insulin sensitivity just like a workout does. So that means at the end of a fast, you are so insulin sensitive that what you consume in terms of protein and carbohydrates is very likely going to get shuttled directly where you want it to go, to the muscle and not to the fat, okay? You don't have to take my word for it. There was a study that was published in the journal Cell Metabolism that put subjects on a 5-week time-restricted feeding diet, and it found they had marked improvements in insulin sensitivity, as well as lessened blood glucose and lessened levels of risk factors, things like that. So lots of health benefits, but their insulin sensitivity improved dramatically. Now, there's other studies that show that lifting itself improves insulin sensitivity. So it would make sense that we would want to work out in a fasted state and then break our fast to capitalize on protein synthesis. So when we look at that, we actually start to break down the science of that. If you work out in a fasted state, when it comes time to eat your post-workout meal, you're going to absorb more of that protein. In fact, there are studies that show that when you look at groups that train in a fasted state versus non-fasted state, the groups that train in a fasted state have 2 times the levels of something called P70S6K, which is an indicator of muscle protein synthesis. Muscle protein synthesis is where your body takes the protein and is actually turning it into muscle versus just deaminating it for different things within the body. So simply put, you can get 2 times as much protein synthesis by training in a fasted state. The caveat is you'd want to be breaking your fast right after your workout. So if you are someone that works out in the morning, you're probably starting to connect the dots that fasting until the evening time would be quite difficult, right? Because you wouldn't be able to capitalize on breaking your fast right after your workout. More on that in a little bit. I have to do this in a proper sequence, otherwise it's going to be confusing. So I will touch on that more. So before I go into the nitty-gritty of how to time your workout, I will say this. Give some solid consideration into splitting up and changing your eating window periods. So what I mean by that, most people, and I mean like 98% of people that practice intermittent fasting, will fast most of the day and then break their fast mid-afternoon or evening. I highly recommend that you consider changing up the time period. Consider fasting morning to morning. So that way it can look something like this. You work out first thing in the morning, and then you break your fast after your workout. And then maybe you have one more meal, and then you fast the rest of the day until morning time the next day. So rather than skipping breakfast, you're skipping dinner. This is going to allow you to capitalize on that insulin sensitivity if you work out in the morning. If you don't work out in the morning, it's not that big of a deal. You should just try to time your workout to be at the end of your fast. However, don't do this every day. First of all, you should not be fasting every day in the first place. If you fast every day in the first place while you're trying to build muscle, you are going to be disappointed because you will probably be in such a caloric deficit all the time, it's going to be somewhat difficult. So what I recommend you do is fast 3 or 4 days per week and make it so that your workouts that are your biggest lifting workouts, like your leg day or your leg and back day or your chest and back day, make sure those days are the days that fall at the end of your fast. Not every single time you work out, because otherwise you're working out so far at the end of your fast, you run the risk of burning up muscle. So save your biggest workouts for the days that you train at the end of your fasting period. So for example, if I was going to go train legs, I would want to try to train legs on a day where I can break my fast right after my workout. Why is this? Because you're going to make yourself the most insulin sensitive by training a large body part at the end of your fast. And everything we want is about manipulating that insulin sensitivity. The more insulin sensitive you are, the more protein and carbohydrates you're going to absorb at a point in time. Which leads me to, what should you break your fast with? Well, I'll give you some details, but I'm not going to tell you specifically what you should eat because that's up to you, okay? You want to break your fast and ultimately your post-workout with a good amount of protein that is very, 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 very lean, okay? And you want to have a little bit of carbohydrates. Can you build muscle without carbohydrates? Yes, you absolutely can. And I've quite honestly done videos on that. But there's no denying that it's a little bit easier to build muscle while intermittent fasting if you have some carbohydrates in the mix. Even if you're following a ketogenic diet, which a lot of people that watch my channel are, having carbs right after your workout is only going to kick you out of ketosis for a small amount of time, and you're going to get all these benefits of being able to build muscle. So my general recommendation is to have about 15 or so grams of carbohydrates coming from the way of fructose. This would mean something like some berries or maybe some melon or some watermelon, or maybe even in a half like a clementine orange or something like that. Get yourself 15, 20 grams of fructose. Then get yourself a good 25, maybe to 40 grams of regular carbohydrates by way of maybe a baked potato that's with nothing else on it, right? Baked potato, that's just an example, just a clean carbohydrate with no fats. Maybe a rice cake, a couple rice cakes that give you 35, 40 grams of carbohydrates. Adjust it for you specifically. The reason that we do this, just for those of you that want to know, is fructose and glucose work together to actually speed up how fast carbs get absorbed. Remember, what we're trying to do here is spike our insulin, but we're trying to spike our insulin in as short of a window as possible. So if we can have a little bit of fructose along with our glucose, it makes that spike from this length of time to this length of time and that much higher. We want to take that spike and go from this to this. Okay, that's what we're really after. And a little bit of glucose and fructose together will help that. Now, one of the reasons I want you to do this right after a workout that is a big body part is when you work out big body parts, you activate specific insulin receptors that are in your muscle cells. So what that means is the carbohydrates that you do consume, even if you're keto, are going to go into the muscle. They're not going to go into the liver, kicking you out of ketosis, at least a little bit. You might get knocked out of ketosis, you might slow down fat burning for a little bit of time, but the large majority of the protein and the carbohydrates that you consume are going to go to the muscle as glycogen replenishment and P70S6K phosphorylation and muscle protein synthesis. What about the kind of protein that you should have? Look, I have my opinions and I have my biases without a doubt. I do think that breaking your fast with like a lean protein shake is always a solid idea, but I think that there's some extra benefit to having a very lean red meat or having a lean Even a poultry would be okay, but like a very lean red meat that still has maybe 1 or 2, 3 grams of fat coming from omega-3 sources as much as possible. The reason that I say this is the Journal of Clinical Sciences published a very intriguing study that found that omega-3s increased muscle protein synthesis and mTOR activation, which I'll explain in a second, significantly more than groups that didn't have omega-3s. So what's interesting is omega-3s by themselves, like if someone were to just take omega-3 capsules or something, didn't cause an increase in protein synthesis or mTOR activation. But when they combined omega-3s with good quality amino acids and protein, it increased mTOR. mTOR is what you want on when you're building muscle. Autophagy is what you want on when you're burning fat and going through a fast. Okay, so it's 2 night and day things. When you're fasting, autophagy is a goal. When you're not fasting, mTOR is the goal. What we're doing with fasting is clearly separating the two, and that is the plan, keeping them totally separate. So we're not going autophagy, mTOR, autophagy, mTOR, autophagy, mTOR. We're going autophagy, mTOR, keeping them separate. Separation of church and state, mTOR, autophagy. So the cool thing is that study found that it increased mTOR activity and muscle protein synthesis 50%, okay? That's some serious stuff. Now also, it's so important that you get grass-fed, grass-finished if you're gonna go this route, because that is the kind of protein that has the omega-3s. Salmon would have too much fat. We wouldn't want to have salmon post-workout. We want to keep it lean, like a lean steak or lean ground beef, right? Okay, but then additionally, grass-fed, grass-finished has vitamin A in it. Interesting results have shown that when protein synthesis is occurring in the body, when you are building muscle actively, vitamin A levels are being depleted. There's some theories as to why, but there's no denying that there is a correlation there. Okay, that correlation of as my body's building muscle and going through synthesis, my vitamin A levels are being depleted, which implies that we need vitamin A for muscle protein synthesis. Well, you're not going to find vitamin A in traditional grain-fed meat. So if you don't go protein shake, go lean meat. I will say, I put a link down below if you want to get good grass-fed, grass-finished meat that's cheaper than the grocery store in most places. You want to check out ButcherBox. So a special discount for anyone that watches my videos. It's grass-fed, grass-finished meat delivered to your doorstep. So high omega-3 content, good vitamin A content, but also just delicious stuff that gets delivered right to your doorstep. So it saves you the money of having to go to the grocery store, saves you the time. They're a tremendous, tremendous part of this channel because I talk about them so much. So anyway, special deal down below. Check it out after you watch this video, and a huge thank you to them for extending that pricing to people that watch my videos. It's super awesome that they do that. Let's jump over really quick to coffee and caffeine. I think you guys are gonna like what I have to say here. Yes, you should have caffeine pre-workout. Nothing else. Remember, you're training in a fasted state. Caffeine is going to increase catecholamines, it's going to increase adrenaline, epinephrine, therefore phosphorylating what is called perilipin, which basically allows hormone-sensitive lipase to activate. People tend to think that when they are doing any kind of muscle building program, that they should just neglect fat burning altogether. No, 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 no. You're not gonna burn fat and build muscle literally at the same instant. So capitalize on the times when you would be burning fat and burn some fat. Because if you're building muscle and you can burn fat in the process, it gives you a little bit more wiggle room to have more calories. Okay, you want to be able to have more calories so you can stimulate muscle growth, but you want to be able to burn the excess fat without burning the muscle. So having that caffeine pre-workout, just like straight black coffee or straight caffeine, is perfect. But guess what? Along with that post-workout meal, you might want to have a cup of coffee too. Here's why. The Journal of Applied Physiology published a very cool study that concluded that caffeine increases glycogen uptake into the muscle, which means you're going to get more carbohydrates going into the muscle. So they found when subjects consumed either a carbohydrate drink or a carbohydrate plus caffeine drink, that the subjects that consumed a caffeine plus carbohydrate drink ended up having significantly more, 66% more glycogen uptake in the muscles 4 hours after a workout. So what does that mean? That means you have less likelihood of those carbohydrates circulating around and going to fat accumulation, fat storage. Instead, 66% more are going to go to the muscle. If you are following a low-carb diet and you want to keep exceptionally lean while building muscle, whoa, mind blown, because this allows you to really, really take advantage of that. So have that caffeine along with that grass-fed steak and that little bit of rice cake and that little bit of tangerine or whatever you choose to have. Just to give you a little bit of some foreshadowing as to what's going to happen the rest of this video, I'm going to talk a little bit about cardio timing. Then I'm going to go jump in and talk about how you might want to orient your cardio days and how you might want to orient your major lifting days, kind of what we've already talked about. And then I'm going to give you a whole calorie breakdown because I think that's a very important thing that people want to know about. How many calories should you have? Should you be in a caloric surplus? We'll talk about that. Just wanted to give you a little bit of a touch of what's to come. Very important if you are doing intermittent fasting and you are trying to build muscle that you do not neglect your cardio. Okay? Other strategies might allow you to neglect cardio, but we are working on a slightly different pathway with intermittent fasting. Intermittent fasting, we are trying to achieve mitochondrial efficiency and get the best mitochondrial density. We are improving our metabolism at its core. Whereas other people that are trying to build muscle by gobs and gobs of protein powders and eating 8 meals a day, their mitochondria is not operating the way that yours is if you're fasting. You, I hate to say it, are upper echelon. You are superior in the sense of the way that your body is working in this case. Okay, cardio improves mitochondrial density. The Journal of Applied Physiology published a study that showed that just 30 minutes of endurance exercise done almost every other, I think this study was every day, but still every other day or so for a period of like 4, 5, 6 weeks, improves mitochondrial density, volume density, 40%. I understand that you may not be a science nerd like me, but that is huge. The mitochondria is where we process energy in the body. If we improve the density of that by 40%, it's like we just added 40 more employees to a factory that creates energy. That is huge. How does that help you with building muscle? Well, not only is it going to give your body more furnace power to just incinerate calories, it's going to make you stronger because ATP is still created at the mitochondrial level. So you will find that you are stronger, you have more stamina, and you can push through those last reps a lot better. So it makes a big, big, big difference just by keeping your cardio in the equation. But full disclaimer and very important note to make. I do not want you doing your cardio at the end of a fast. So remember how I talked about doing your weight training at the end of a fast? That is different from cardio. We're talking two different worlds here. So your weight training should be at the end of a fast, ideally for your big body part days. Your cardio should be towards, it could be in the middle of the fast. I just don't want you doing excessive cardio when you're already extremely nutrient deprived because you're fasting. Example like this. If I tell you to do your lifting workout at the end of a fast, you're going to be lifting at the end of 16, 17, 18, 20 hours. If you do your cardio in the morning and you're going to break your fast in the evening, that would be fine. You're still technically fasted, but you're only 8 hours into a fast instead of 16 or 20, right? So that's the point there. So you just want to set up your days accordingly. Big lifting days on the days that you break your fast right after a workout, cardio days where they're not going to be close to the end of your fast, and maybe some small lifting days in the same category as your cardio days. It's also very important that on the non-intermittent fasting days, you just eat healthy and you try to just follow a standard plan. The benefit of intermittent fasting for muscle building is the fasting period keeps you lean, so you can have a little bit more flexibility with your other days. So now we get to talk about calories. The big thing. What I have to really make crystal clear is that a caloric surplus needs to be measured in a different way than you think. I get asked all the time, should I be in a caloric surplus to build muscle? And the short answer is, yeah, to some degree, yes. But you don't measure it over the course of a day. In fact, I would actually recommend that you take the amount of calories that you would typically eat in a day and then divide that number by 24 and figure out how many calories you consume per hour on an average, right? So like if you were to aggregate it all, if I consume 2,400 calories in a day, then I roughly consume 100 calories per hour. So what I want you to do is on a fasting day, remember you're only eating or allowed to eat for, let's say, 8 hours of that day. If you're doing a 16-8 method, then you are not allowed to eat over the whole 24 hours. You're allowed to eat through that 8 hours. So what I want you to do is be in a surplus for each respective hour you're allowed to eat. Okay? So what that would look like is if you normally consume 2,400 calories in a day, then maybe if you're allowed to eat 8 hours, that only amounts to 800 calories, right? But that 800 calories is probably going to be enough to sustain muscle during that point in time. Not saying you eat 800 calories. I just want you to factor in how many calories you take in based on an hourly basis, not on a daily basis. And my whole point in saying that is you don't need to try to cram in 2,400 calories in a couple hours. You just don't. As long as you are in a surplus over that 1,000 calorie mark, you're gonna be fine. It's all about the timing and getting the calories high for the appropriate time period you're actually eating. Your body's not gonna handle 2,400 calories in a couple hour period. It's just gonna neglect it and not utilize it right. So massage that a little bit, but don't worry about it too much. Just get yourself in a nice surplus on the days that you don't fast and you'll be in much better shape. I hope that makes sense. Let's talk quickly about supplements. You shouldn't consume any supplements while you're fasting other than maybe some magnesium and possibly some green tea. Okay? So while you're fasting, green tea is going to help you. It is going to help you burn fat. It is going to help you with a lot of different things. It is going to help you stay satiated. Okay? But I also recommend taking in some magnesium so that your body can have a little bit of a calming effect. Magnesium is very, very good at keeping you calm, but it also makes it so that you still have the fat burning mechanisms. You're not turning those off by calming yourself down. Protein powders, obviously okay after you break your fast. Okay? Any kind of antioxidants, vitamin C, things like that will technically break a fast in some interesting ways that I'm not going to explain in this video. So save almost all of your supplementation to the post-workout and just eating period. Vitamin D becomes exceptionally critical for you. I recommend between 2,500 and 5,000 IUs of vitamin D to help with muscle protein synthesis as it is required. Okay? It's very, very important there. Okay? And then additionally, do not consume anything like branched chain amino acids during your fast. I know that a lot of people want to build muscle and they want to take those because they think they're going to preserve muscle, but they break the fast and they will spike your insulin so that when you do break your fast, you don't get as big of a spike. Remember, the one thing I really want you to take away with this, we are consolidating the insulin spike so that we get a massive surge of protein synthesis right at the perfect amount of time to capitalize on muscle growth when we will actually use it in the first place. You're not building muscle all the time. You build muscle at very specific times. And with intermittent fasting, we allow complete control of that. So now you have the details. You have the specifics in terms of what you need to pay attention to. Later on, I can possibly do a meal plan video that gives you a sample meal plan, but for now, you need the details. I have plenty of other videos and complete guides to intermittent fasting, complete guides to keto, and everything linked below in the description. But for now, please do hit that red subscribe button, hit that bell icon, and then please do this channel a favor and yourself a favor by checking out ButcherBox down below in the description for your special discount, special pricing, special access. Thanks again. You guys are awesome. See you soon.